Work takes up most of your time. That's why you should use Stamps.com to save time with your mailing and shipping. Stamps.com will simplify your postage needs and add valuable time back into your workday, so you have flexibility to focus on more important things. Stamps.com can handle your mailing and shipping needs with rates up to 88% off UPS and USPS. Send invoices, checks, certified mail, packages, and anything else you need to keep your business running with Stamps.com. If you sell online, connecting with every major marketplace and shopping cart is easy. Plus, you can schedule package pickups through their dashboard and automatically see your cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers with Stamps.com's Rate Advisor. Add more flexibility to your workday with Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com/program to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/program.
And welcome to episode 84 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me as always is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey man, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm on staycation.
You're on staycation?
I am, and it's been awesome.
You could pretend you went somewhere.
I don't want to.
I don't want to Italy or, oi, matey, pretend
I
you went
think
to Australia.
in your head, you are always somewhere in another country.
I am.
That's what I truly believe.
Is there any other way?
Yeah, I'm here, man. This is where I want to be.
You just said, I'm here, man.
I didn't want to go anywhere else.
It sounded like you might be a little Jamaican, man.
In my head, I'm in Jamaica.
Yeah, man.
No, I was definitely very happy to just stay at home and veg out for a little bit.
Did you do anything exciting?
No. I got the new NBA 2K19. That's exciting for me.
What'd you name yourself?
Mike Ferguson. As a 45-year-old man who still plays video games.
You play them a lot.
That's pretty exciting.
You play them a lot.
I do play video games.
It's
you know what's funny? My kids don't play video games at all.
Really?
No.
Not at all?
No. And maybe it's because they're girls, but their boyfriend, my one daughter's boyfriend, he plays video games.
Really?
But my daughters don't play video games.
Does he play with you?
Sometimes.
Yeah? Is he good?
Yeah.
Can he beat you?
Of course he is. He's like a 17-year-old kid.
Can he beat you?
He didn't. No. I'm sure he could. He didn't the night that we played.
Did he let you win? Because you're the...
He might have. And if he did, that's a good move on his part.
This could be my future father-in-law. I better let him win.
You never know.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, we got some Patreon supporters. We got to give some shout-outs.
Let's do it.
We had Mary Ravensway.
Thank you, Mary Ravensway.
Nadia Hall.
Hey, thank you.
Rush Johnson jumped out at our highest level.
Awesome.
Nick G.
Nikki G.
Sean Spartacus Copeland.
Hey, thanks, Sean.
Carson Holst.
Hey, thank you.
Peta McConaughey. Kiralee Cole.
Kiralee Cole.
Jumped out at our highest level. One of my favorite new first names.
You do.
I've never seen that before.
You were sketching out a tattoo for it a minute ago.
Mm-hmm. Tony McCow.
Hey, Tony.
Roxanne S.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Aaron Anderson.
Thank you, Aaron.
Megan Smith jumped out at our highest level.
Megan.
Lisa.
Just Lisa.
Ender Strika.
Hey, Ender.
It sounds like could be a woman UFC fighter name.
Reminds me of that movie. Remember the Ender Games?
No.
That's it?
The Ender Games.
Yeah.
Nope.
No? Okay.
Never saw it.
It's out there.
I know. A lot of the movies you watch are crap, so I don't watch a lot.
Wow, that hurts, man.
You watch some weird sci-fi. You watch a lot of sci-fi stuff.
Just whatever's on the TV, man.
Is it a sci-fi movie?
It actually is a sci-fi movie. Very good.
I actually know what it is. I'm just messing.
Oh, okay.
I've never seen it, though.
Yeah. Harrison Ford's in it.
Yeah. And a little kid, right?
Yeah.
There's a kid.
Yeah.
Katrina Lamont.
Hey, Katrina.
Greta Garten.
Thank you.
Allison Ryan.
Thank you.
Kate Fleming.
Thanks.
Marion.
Just Marion.
Just Marion.
Yeah.
Mary Celeste,
Thank you, Mary Celeste.
Elizabeth Crooks,
Thanks.
Shasta Scarborough,
Thank you, Scarborough.
Jessica Sharp,
Thank you.
Stephanie Alexander,
Awesome.
Jennifer Cook, Kim
Beautiful.
Hess,
Yes.
Sandra Wilcoxon,
Willa Coxon.
Kelly,
Just Kelly.
Lucy Indro Diova,
In the Sky with Diamonds.
Anna,
Anna.
Florence Foodie Club, which
We know.
we've given big shouts out. We actually gave multiple shout outs to them on the TCAT
We
episode.
did, because it's a Florence, that's Italy.
Yeah, they're in Italy.
Yes.
Karen,
Hey, Karen.
Dustin Schillinger,
Thank you.
Beth Watt,
Awesome.
and Joanne Stevens.
Thank you so much.
And then back in the vault, Gibbs,
Yeah.
this week we selected Jen Storms,
Jen, thank you so much.
and huge supporter of the show, been with us a long time. And we appreciate that. We appreciate all the new support, as well as the people that continue to support us month
Oh,
after
you
month.
guys are awesome.
And PayPal as well. We had Cheryl Madalazzo,
Mazzolato.
not even close, and Deborah Pfeiffer.
Oh, thank you, Pfeiffer. Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. All right, Gibbs, right now we have an episode out on True Crime All the Time.
We do.
We're talking about Gary Allen Walker.
Yeah. Messed up little dude.
Yeah, he's a very messed up dude. A lesser known case for sure.
Yeah.
Hard to find a lot of research material on
True.
this case.
That's true.
But I liked it. I thought it was a good one. And, I'm always looking for those cases that you don't hear about every day. And this
Yeah.
was a very bad guy.
He was. He was a terrible guy. Terrible.
But also, like a lot of people we talked to, he had a messed up childhood.
He
And you just
did.
wonder how much did that play into, and I think he had some mental illness. So those two things put together, I just
Yeah.
don't know how much they played a
Childhood was definitely blanked up.
It was. But make sure you check that out. Now, have to make an announcement. We'll be off next week. There will be no episode of True Crime All Time Unsolved.
Say what?
Say what? And so definitely wanted to put that out before I forget.
But jump over to Patreon if you're not. Jump over to Patreon. You catch an episode there.
Yep, there is a new Patreon episode coming out. It's a good time to sign up for Patreon.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, you ready to jump into this episode of Unsolved?
Yeah.
Got to do it.
This one was recommended and got some research from Sophia Smith, so I really appreciate it, and it really intrigued me.
So we're talking about the mystery of the Mary Celeste, the ship, and her missing crew. And we're going back a ways. I mean, this is December 5th, 1872. The Mary Celeste was an American merchant ship, and it was discovered adrift and deserted in the Atlantic Ocean off the Azores Island.
Yeah. Out there, man.
So mysterious already from Jump Street, 21 Jump Street.
That is.
It was discovered by a Canadian ship in an unkempt, but I guess what you would call seaworthy condition. It was under partial sail, and the ship's lifeboat was missing. The last entry in the ship's log was dated 10 days earlier. It had left New York City for Genoa on November 7th. And when it was found, there were still a lot of provisions on the ship. The cargo was made up of denatured alcohol, which was still intact, and the captain's and the crew's personal belongings were undisturbed. None of those who had been on board were ever seen or heard from again. So this is very mysterious.
Yeah, it really is. Because immediately you're like, so where are they?
Where'd all these people go?
I mean, did nobody ever find them? Nobody knows, no trace, no. And that's the big mystery about this.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get into it as we go along. Now, before this ship was known as the Mary Celeste, it was called the Amazon.
How about that? The Amazon.
The Amazon.
Back then, today, Amazon's something totally different.
It is.
It's bigger than a ship today.
The Amazon was a British vessel built on Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, by a shipbuilder named Joshua Dewis. The keel of the future Mary Celeste was built in late 1860. The ship was constructed of locally felled timber, and it had 2 masts. This was a quality built ship. It launched on May 18th, 1861, and was registered at nearby Parsboro on June 10th, 1861. The registration documents described the ship as 99.3 feet in length.
That's pretty long.
Seems like it.
Right? That's football field? No.
No.
That's 100 yards.
It's a third of a football field.
Third of a football field. So like to the 35?
Yeah. It doesn't seem that long when I think about it that way.
Yeah. But for a boat, that's big.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty big.
Back in the day?
I wasn't on a lot of boats back in the day, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're not on a lot of boats now. You don't really like the ocean. You don't like
No,
the
not
water.
the ocean.
The lake, you're on boats.
The lake,
yeah.
I'm fine. It was 25.5 feet wide with a depth of 11.7 feet. At the time the ship was built, it was owned by a local group of 9 people. So you had Joshua Dewis, who was the builder, Robert McClellan, the ship's first captain, McClellan's father, and then 6 other investors. Amazon made her maiden voyage in June 1861, and she sailed to 5 islands to take on a cargo of timber for passage across the Atlantic to London. McClellan, who was one of the owners and was the captain of the ship, he got really sick on this first voyage, developed pneumonia that he never recovered from, and he died on June 19th.
Imagine, finally got your big day, you're the big captain, and you get sick and you die. I mean, pneumonia back then had to be, it's hard to recover sometimes around here. I can't imagine being back in the day and being on the open sea and having
pneumonia.
But wouldn't be good.
You know what? A week or so into the voyage, he died.
That's rough.
A little bit more than a week. It was about 9 days, I guess, after they launched. So a guy named John Nutting Parker took over as captain and resumed the voyage to London. But the Amazon would encounter some misadventures. You know, she collided with some fishing equipment off Eastport, Maine. And after the ship left London, it ran into and sank a small ship in the English Channel.
That would be a bad day, to run into a little ship and
sink it.
Sink it. Sorry, mate. Sorry I sunk your ship.
You sank my battleship.
You sank my battleship.
Parker would captain the vessel for 2 more years, during which Amazon would work in the West Indies trade route, which, Gibbs, that was big business.
That was,
time.
Man. That was all the...
Everything flowed through.
Yeah.
That West Indies trade route.
I mean, you watch any movies back in that time frame, they always talk about the West Indies.
He would then sail the Amazon across the Atlantic to France in the winter of 1861. And it was there in France that the ship was painted by a famous maritime artist. But this was Parker's last voyage. This was 1863. Parker was succeeded by a man named William Thompson, who would helm the ship until 1867. And during that time, it made a bunch of trips, but nothing of note, right? Nothing extraordinary happened.
Yeah, just business as usual.
But in October of 1867, at Cape Breton Island, the Amazon was driven ashore in a storm and was so badly damaged that the owners just left it there as a wreck.
It's pretty bad.
It would have to be pretty bad.
Yeah, Gilligan's Island, when the ship went up on the beach and they just said, oh, we can't leave.
On October 15th, the ship was acquired as abandoned by a man named Alexander McBean, who was from Nova Scotia. He sold the ship sometime in late November of 1867, and it sat with the new owner for about a year until November of 1868, when an American businessman bought it. His name was Richard Haynes. He paid Gibbs the whopping sum of $1,750 for it. And actually back then, that probably was a whopping sum.
It probably was. Probably like...
What would that be today?
Today's money?
Beep, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, 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 boop.
80,000.
Are you kidding me? Are you saying almost $2,000 in 1867 would today be worth $80,000.
Yeah. You think
I don't
I'm too
think
low?
you've ever been as far off in your Gibby calculations
Are you
as
thinking
you are
like
right now.
350,000?
I think it would be way more.
Let's go 350.
I still think it would be way more. After this episode, we are going to calculate it.
I'm going to go with 350. Final answer.
All right, we'll see. But he did put another $8,825 into it. So depending on how correct your conversions are, maybe I'm wrong, Gibbs. Maybe $80,000 isn't that far off.
Yeah, it's about...
Because that would mean he put, over $500,000 in today's money into fixing it up.
Seems like a lot when you say it that way.
It does seem like a lot when
now
you
I'm
say it
thinking,
like that.
maybe not. But still, he had to come up with a little more than 10 grand out of his pocket back then.
That was a lot of money. It really was.
People can't come up with 10 grand a day.
So he was the owner, but he also became the captain. And in December of 1868, he registered the boat in New York as an American vessel named the Mary Celeste.
Yeah, it's a good name.
So we finally get to how, it being called the Mary Celeste. But there was a problem, Gibbs. Haynes didn't pay his creditors, so apparently he didn't have $10,000. He borrowed some money.
That explains it.
That does help, but he didn't pay them back, and the ship got seized. Or as today you would think it got repoed.
Repoed. I repoed a ship today.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun. And it was sold to a group of New York investors led by James Winchester.
Ooh, I wonder if it's the Winchester
of the famous Winchesters.
Yeah.
So not much happened with the ship for about 3 years. And then it went through a major overhaul in the spring of 1872. And this was a refit that cost over $10,000.
That's quite a bit of money.
It is, but they made the ship bigger, which meant that it could haul more. The dimensions increased to, was 103 feet long, almost 26 feet wide, and the depth was just over 16 feet.
So they definitely increased. I mean, they went everywhere with the dimensions, but they really made it much deeper. Like they added over 5 feet in depth.
Well, they added a second deck to it too.
There you
so
go.
That's probably where the depth came from.
Right.
And they added new transoms, which increased the tonnage. New partners would be brought in on the ship in October of 1872, and one of these was the new captain, a man named Benjamin Spooner Briggs. He was born in Wareham, Massachusetts on April 24th, 1935. He was one of 5 sons of a sea captain named Nathan Briggs. 2 of his brothers also became sea captains.
It's a pretty seaworthy family.
Seafaring, yep.
Yeah.
Benjamin would marry his cousin, Sarah Cobb.
Now,
So
that's just what you did back then, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not making too much out of that. It's the late 1800s.
It's just what you did.
That's just what you did. They had 2 children, a son, Arthur, and a daughter, Sophia. So it was in October of 1872. Benjamin was set to command the Mary Celeste on her first voyage to Genoa, Italy. He was going to take his wife and infant daughter, but his school-age son was going to stay at home with his grandmother. And he also handpicked his crew. His first mate, Albert Richardson, had sailed with Briggs in the past. And it probably didn't hurt Gibbs that he was related to the main owner, Winchester.
It probably, a little bonus
That
there.
never hurts in getting a job. His second mate was a man named Andrew Gilling from New York. He was only 25 years old. But 25 years old in the late 1800s. I mean, what was the average lifespan
That's
in 18?
true, too. That'd probably be,
And you were seasoned by 25 years old.
That's right.
His main steward was Edward Head, man that had just gotten married. And Head was also acquainted with Winchester.
So again,
Doesn't hurt.
helps to rub elbows with the right people sometimes.
Yep, and he had some seamen on board that were German natives, Volkert and Bas Lorenzen, Arian Martins, and Gottlieb Goodshot.
There's a name.
There's some names,
Yeah.
for sure. So we get to October 20th, 1872. Briggs arrived at Pier 50 on the East River in New York City to watch them load the ship's cargo bound for Genoa. So we're talking about 1,700 barrels of poisonous denatured alcohol.
Scary.
Okay. A week later, his wife and daughter arrived. And then Tuesday morning, November 5th, the Mary Celeste left Pier 50, moved out into New York Harbor. But the weather wasn't good, and Briggs decided to hold off.
A little choppy out there.
Yeah, wait for better conditions. So he anchored the ship just off Staten Island. And while they were anchored, his wife wrote some letters. She wrote to her mother-in-law. One said, "Tell Arthur I make great dependence on the letters I shall get from him, and will try to remember anything that happens on the voyage, which he would be pleased to hear."
So mom writing her son. I mean,
Yeah.
or writing a letter for
To
her,
the grandmother,
to the
but
that has
for
a
her
son.
son.
Yeah. I mean, I guess both her and the captain wrote some letters back home also. Just, I mean, basically they were summarizing that they were happy with the ship. They were happy with the crew that they picked. The crew seemed to be all in good spirits, and that they all seemed to be getting along quite well. Again, it's just days into the journey.
It is, but I think it's important to point out, knowing what's going to happen to this ship, you know, the state of the ship at this time is important.
Yes.
Like there's doesn't seem to be anything going on.
Right.
Couple of days later, the weather cleared, and the Mary Celeste left the harbor and headed out into the Atlantic. So this whole time, Gibbs, that the Mary Celeste is getting ready to sail. The ship that would ultimately find her, this Canadian ship that we mentioned up front.
The Dia Grata,
Yeah, I wasn't going to try to say it because I knew I would butcher it.
or the Dia Gratia.
Yeah. It was anchored in Hoboken, New Jersey. It was being loaded with petroleum. So that was its cargo that was destined for Genoa as well. The captain of this ship was a man by the name of David Morehouse, and his first mate was Oliver DeVoe. And there have been a lot of people that have come out and said that the captains of these two ships, so Morehouse and Briggs, were the best of friends, and that they actually went out to dinner the night before leaving port. So this Canadian ship left port on November 15th, 8 days after the Mary Celeste. And it followed pretty much the same route. It was going to the same place, after all.
Yeah, exactly.
It was on Wednesday, December 4th, 1872 at 1 p.m. when the Canadian ship reached the point that was midway between Azores and the coast of Portugal. The helmsman reported seeing a vessel about 6 miles out coming towards the ship.
How do you see that anyway? They had those fancy little
That's a long way. 6
one-eyed
miles.
binoculars. You know, they pull the telescope thing.
Like a telescope?
It's
You
actually
just
called
said a one-eyed binocular?
one-eyed binocular. Yeah, let's get that one.
Get me one of those one-eyed
Yeah,
binoculars.
don't give me the two-eye. I don't want that. The way you rigged them up last time didn't work well.
Binocular has the word
Bi in it,
meaning
yeah.
two.
I know. I just thought about that.
One-eyed binocular.
I didn't think you pointed out to the whole podcast world,
I had to.
but it's
just
out there
had to.
now. So anyway, yeah, one of those telescoping lens.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. Get up on the, what do they call it, the bird watch, the
Crow's nest.
The crow's nest. There
The
you
bird's
go.
watch.
The bird's watch. The crow's nest.
You are a man's man and a sailor, my friend. I got to get me one of those one-eyed binoculars.
But I don't have nothing on me.
So they alerted the captain of the Canadian ship, and he came to the deck. He could tell something was wrong. He could see it. You know, he was looking at the other ship. He could tell by the way the sails were set. He could tell in the way that, you know, the ship was moving. And as they got closer, he realized no one was on the ship's deck. No one answered their signals. So he sent his first and second mate onto the ship to investigate. As these two guys are rowing up to the boat, they realize that it's the Mary Celeste.
Probably in shock, you know. I mean, they just saw it in port just, you know, a week earlier.
They climbed up on the ship and they saw that it was abandoned. And again, you talk about being in shock, Gibbs. They noted that the sails were in bad shape. Some were missing.
Even the rigging looked like it was in bad shape and just not set properly.
2 of the 3 hatches were open. Only the main was closed. Now, the Mary Celeste was a good-sized ship, but it reportedly only had a single lifeboat. But it was gone. Nowhere to be found. The ship's compass housing was out of place. The glass cover was broken, but the compass inside was intact. It seemed to be working.
Yeah, and the ship had about 3.5 feet of water into it as well, which I would think would be a big concern. But when you research this, it seems like it wasn't that big of concern. Like, not normal, but not a...
Not that it was in any danger of sinking with that amount of water.
But I think I'd be like, we got 3.5 feet of water. I'm out of here, you know?
Diving overboard?
Yeah, exactly.
So they found the ship's daily log in the first mate's cabin. It was dated November 25th, 8 a.m. It had the position of the ship as being off Santa Maria Island in the Azores. This was just about where the Canadian ship found the Mary Celeste. The first mate thought that the ship appeared to be in fairly good condition considering, right, everything else that he saw. He said, some cabin interiors were wet from the water that had spilled through the doorways and the skylights. In the captain's cabin, Captain Briggs's cabin, he found personal items laying around. He found a sheathed sword, but he didn't find any of the captain's papers or instruments. The galley was in order. As we mentioned, there were plenty of provisions. But again, Gibbs, they hadn't been at sea very long.
Yeah, so you would think they should have.
Right. There's no way they would have gone through too much of their provisions in the short amount of time that they had been at sea.
But when whatever reason they left or were taken or whatever happened, nobody touched the provisions. So does that mean that they were in a hurry to get off? Does that mean...
how much could they really take if they only had one little bitty
lifeboat? Well, that's true, too.
Boat?
I guess you take...
you take yourself first.
Take yourself and then figure wherever you get to, you'll find what you need to eat.
So the 2 guys, first and second mate, they come back to the Canadian ship. And they tell Captain Morehouse everything that they saw. And it's at this point that he decides to take possession of the ship and bring it to port in Gibraltar, which was about 600 nautical miles away. And he sent his first mate back and 2 other senior seamen to navigate the Mary Celeste. And I guess, Gibbs, under maritime law, the captain would be entitled to a large share of the sale of the vessel and the cargo.
Well, then bring it on back, right?
We'll sell it and I'll make a bundle.
Make a bunch of money and retire and call it a day.
So the Canadian ship reached the port of Gibraltar on December 12th, 1872. And the Mary Celeste, after encountering some fog, got there the next day.
Yeah, so, I mean, as soon as they arrived at the port, the courts will automatically just impound the ship while they wait for the salvage hearing. And then if it's successful, the captain will get paid and he'll pay down to his mates and his seamen and things like that. Kind of the captain is the boss of the company. So he'll get his cut and he'll share with the rest of them. So it's a good day for everybody if the salvage hearings go well and they get a good price at the auction. You can make some good money.
Well, yeah, it's a good day for the crew of the Canadian ship.
Well, that's true.
Not good for
whatever happened to
the crew of the Mary Celeste. The salvage court hearings began in Gibraltar on December 17th. The hearing was conducted by Frederick Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar. And this was a man that has been described as very arrogant, very pompous, the sort of man that when he made his mind up about something, he wasn't going to change it. But it's mates DeVoe and Wright that convinced Flood that a crime was committed on the ship. Flood would say that there has been foul play somewhere, and he thought that the alcohol that was on the ship was at the bottom of it. So he ordered an examination of the Mary Celeste, and they brought in a diver named Ricardo Portinato.
So they would find and note that there was cuts on each side of the bow and try to determine what caused it. All they could say there was a sharp instrument and appeared to be some traces of blood on the captain's sword. But the report also said that the ship did not appear to have been struck by any heavy weather, and the diver would report that the hull of the ship had really not been involved in any type of collision and didn't look like it came aground either at any point. And to even go further, a group of Royal Navy captains also looked at the report and gave their opinion, and they concluded that the cuts on the bow had been made purposely. And those same Royal captains would also discover stains on the ship's rails that might have been blood, and together with some deep marks possibly caused by maybe an axe or a sword. So I think they're looking at exactly what everybody kind of thought at first was some type of foul play. I mean, Flood's suspicions that it was some type of human misconduct rather than, a natural disaster, laid pretty heavy on his mind. It was probably behind the whole mystery of this event.
So on January 22nd, 1873, Flood sent the reports to the Board of Trade in London, and he added his own conclusion, and it was that the crew had gotten into the alcohol, even though, Gibbs, this denatured alcohol was not drinkable. It was not something that you were supposed to drink, but they had gotten into it, and it caused them to murder the Briggs family and the ship's officers in a drunken frenzy. He also concluded that they had made the cuts to the bows to fake a collision, and then they fled in the lifeboat. Flood also noted in the report that he thought Captain Morehouse, the captain of the Canadian ship, and his men were hiding something related to where they actually found the Mary Celeste. I mean, this guy seemed to think that they found it farther to the east than what they stated. One of the reasons why he thought that was he just couldn't see how the Mary Celeste could have made it so far while unmanned. James Winchester, the main owner of the Mary Celeste, arrived in Gibraltar on January 15th. He wanted to know when the ship would be released because they still need to deliver the cargo.
Yeah, he wants to get paid, I'm sure.
But Flood would not release the ship unless Winchester provided a surety bond of $15,000.
Wow, that's steep.
It's steep, and that's money that Winchester didn't have. And then he heard about Flood's theory of the crew of the Mary Celeste drinking this non-potable alcohol, killing the captain and his family, and he didn't like it. He actually got into a verbal spat with Flood. Winchester talked about the high character of not only Captain Briggs, but of the crew as well. He just didn't think there was any way that would happen. So we talked about Flood's theories, of mutiny, of murder. Those theories received some big time setbacks when analysis of the stains on the sword and some of the stains on the railing showed that they were not blood at all.
Which was pretty amazing back in that time that they were able to determine that.
Yeah, in the late 1800s.
Yeah. What did they do back then? The taste test? Just kind of taste it? Does it have an iron? It tastes a little iron. It's got to be blood.
I don't know what scientific methods they had back then.
Yeah.
But another blow to Flood's report came from a captain in the U.S. Navy. He viewed the marks on the bow and determined that they were not man-made, but rather came from the action of the sea on the ship's timbers.
So just the water cutting at the same spot as you sailed across, I mean, I get it. I mean, it's kind of like a power washer.
If you held it in the same spot for...
Yeah, you could make an indentation somewhere eventually fairly easy. So maybe this is where every time the ship hit a certain angle, it just kind of, over time, that's where it cut in at.
So after this, Flood hesitantly released the Mary Celeste on February 25th. They raised a local crew headed up by Captain George Blatchford, a guy from Massachusetts. And a couple of weeks later, they left and headed for Genoa.
No, they still got to deliver that cargo.
They do. They're not going to get paid, right? But the question of the salvage payment was not decided until April 8th, when the courts announced that the salvage award would be £1,700, which was about 1/5 of the total value of the ship and its cargo. This was much less than what everyone expected.
Yeah. But I think, Captain Morehouse and his crew probably wasn't ecstatic about it, but something's better than nothing kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think they thought it was going to be 2 to 3 times that amount.
Yeah.
So Mary Celeste delivered its cargo, and it left Genoa on June 26, 1873. And it made it to New York on September 19th. The Mary Celeste continued to sail, mainly in the West Indies and some Indian Ocean routes, but it regularly lost money. And in February of 1880, it was sold to a group from Boston, headed by a man named Wesley Gove. In November of 1884, the Mary Celeste got a new captain, Gilman Parker. And Parker conspired with some shippers from Boston. They filled the Mary Celeste with pretty much a big cargo of worthless stuff.
Right.
But they put on the ship's manifest that it was a cargo of valuable goods insured for $30,000.
Almost $1 million today, man.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
So then the next month, he set out for Port-au-Prince, which is the capital of Haiti. On January 3rd, 1885, the Mary Celeste approached the port by way of a channel, and this channel had this big coral reef in it. And it was a well-charted coral reef. It wasn't like everybody didn't know about it.
Right. He knew it was there.
It was on the maps. Parker deliberately ran the ship onto this reef, and it ripped out the bottom of the boat and wrecked it beyond repair. He and the crew rowed ashore. Parker sold the salvageable cargo for $500, and then he put in insurance claims for the $30,000.
Wow. Yeah, but the problem was the person that he sold the goods to for $500 knew he got shafted. Whatever he bought for $500 wasn't even worth that. So then he turned them into the insurance people at the time.
And they began to investigate. And it was in July of 1885 that both Parker and the shippers were tried in Boston for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. But Parker was also charged with deliberately wrecking the ship. And at the time, Gibbs, I don't know if it still is, this crime was known as barratry.
Ooh.
Which is a cool word. I've never heard it before. But it carried the death penalty.
That's nothing to mess around with then.
They did not want you deliberately wrecking ships.
You're going to wreck a ship, you're going to die by the noose.
So they heard the conspiracy case first. But the jury could not agree on a verdict. And one of the reasons that came out from jurors is that they didn't want to risk messing up Parker's capital trial by finding him guilty on this conspiracy charge.
So they figure if they find him guilty on that, he'd automatically be found guilty on the second one. So they didn't want to participate at all because they didn't want to steer the outcome of that one, maybe?
I'm not sure, but jurors actually said this. So they didn't want to go through an expensive retrial, so the judge negotiated an arrangement where the defendants withdrew their insurance claims and repaid all of the money that they had received.
I mean, really not a bad deal to avoid.
Not when you were facing the death penalty.
Yeah. So,
because he was allowed to go free.
It's a lucky day.
Now, we got to talk about the theories of what happened to the Mary Celeste. And there are a number of theories.
There really are.
You know, one of the theories is that fumes from the alcohol in the cargo hold rose up and affected the crew.
Well, 1,701 barrels of it, so I'm sure they weren't sealed perfectly tight back then.
So with that one, though, you have to ask yourself, okay, that's plausible, but then wouldn't you expect to find a bunch of dead sailors?
You would think. To
not find anybody, I don't know how you really can support that theory.
I think part of the other theory behind that is, could you have, like the fumes, could they be explosive? I think that was some of the theories behind the fumes of the alcohol as well. But I don't know what.
But then wouldn't you find, like, charred the boat?
Exactly. You would have found, like, the ship would have blown up. Right? But was it the fear that the ship might blow up and they abandoned the ship?
Okay, that's more plausible to me.
Yeah. Is that what happened? They thought, ooh, this doesn't smell good. This could be bad. Let's get off this boat, wait it out. And then something happened that they never went back on the boat. Maybe they didn't secure a tow line to the boat, and the little boat separated from the big boat, and you can never catch it.
I still don't understand how that little boat, as it was described.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people were on this ship. Would it have held all the people on this ship?
Yeah, I guess it did.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how many seats were on the boat, but everybody was supposedly able to get on that.
Well, that's a good theory then. Another theory is that there was a massive earthquake, underneath the ocean. There's been people that have said, it could have been a giant squid. That sounds like some crazy movie. Paranormal activity is another theory.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people that think it was some form of foul play. There are people that have said that maybe Morehouse and his crew somehow lured the crew of the Mary Celeste onto their boat and then killed them all for the salvage money, which they thought was going to be a sizable amount. Turns out that it wasn't as big as what they thought.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, you see this ship in distress, the crew out on the lifeboat waving you down, you row up and say, come on board, and then they off them, push them over.
Nobody would ever find them?
Nobody would find them. Let the sharks take them. They destroy the boat and tow or not tow, but bring the other boat in and take the salvage rights.
Well, you and I have done a lot of cases, and money. People do horrible things to other people over money.
And money back then was, that would have been a big payday. That would have probably taken care of people for many, many years.
Long time.
Yes.
Another theory is that at that dinner that the two captains went to before the Mary Celeste left port, they came up with a plan.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of came up with a plan. It was said that he would get his crew to abandon ship. Morehouse would come by, take the boat in, salvage it, and get the money because it's supposed to be a big payday. And then he would meet up later with Briggs to give Briggs his cut. However, we know that they didn't get the cut they were supposed to. And nobody knows if that's really true or not. That was just another one of the many theories of what could have happened.
Well, and that one's tough for me because that would mean that nobody ever saw any of those crew members ever again.
Right.
So they were...
I would think if you were one of the crew members and that was the plan and you never got paid, you probably would have said something. Eventually, over time, probably would have went to some organization and say, hey, I need some money. I'll tell you the story.
Yeah, I don't think people would be quiet about that because they didn't get the money.
Yeah, so they'd want to talk about it.
There are people that believe that the ship was attacked by pirates because there were pirates active off the coast of Morocco in the late 1860s, 1870s.
Yeah. I think the problem with that theory is if they were attacked by pirates,
what'd they get?
Why didn't they take any of the cargo? I mean, maybe they said they got on board and they're like, yeah, we don't want any of this.
Could.
But why wouldn't they have taken the provisions? I mean, the pirates, wouldn't they want all the food? Wouldn't they taken the captain's sword?
Yeah, I think you can poke holes in any of these.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the fun of it, right? In talking about the different theories. There's people that have talked about the fact that an iceberg could have been what caused those marks on either side of the boat.
They got Titanic all over again.
Exactly. And that's why there was water on the ship. And it, to your point, you said that amount of water would scare you. Maybe it scared the captain and the crew to take off in the lifeboat.
Because I seen Titanic. I know what happens, man.
Exactly.
You don't hang out too long.
And then, to me, anything could happen in a little lifeboat out, out in the sea. The chances of back then, I would think, of you making it to land in a little lifeboat.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge wave, all kinds of different things could happen.
They just get that one guy that just can't sit straight.
He tips them over.
Tips you all over.
And we kind of mentioned the earthquake theory.
Yeah. And this is a real thing. You actually do have these sea quakes. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an actual thing.
But the thought is that, number one, it could have scared the crew into abandoning the ship. And then you're right back into, okay, you get in the lifeboat, something happens to the lifeboat. But also, it could have caused the boat to shake so much that some of the poisonous gas from the alcohol barrels were released, enough to make the crew abandon ship. Some of these theories are a little more plausible to me. Anything that puts the crew out into a little lifeboat and then something happens to that lifeboat and they're never found.
Yeah.
That to me is plausible.
Because, I mean, it really, and you're right. I mean, and so if you're in this bigger boat and then you lower the lifeboat, you all get in, but someone forgets to tie you off to the big boat and naturally the current separates you. Once you get so far away, you're not going to be able to catch up to the big boat. And there's that one guy trying to hold on to, it's like, remember when Wilson went into the water?
Oh, yeah, Wilson.
And he tried to go after Wilson and he couldn't get Wilson because there's no way you can keep up with that current. And then you make the determination. Do you stay with your lifeboat or do you go after the big boat and try to figure something out? No, you're going to stay with the lifeboat and keep yourself as safe as you can.
Now, the Smithsonian Channel did a story on the Mary Celeste in 2007. And the theory put forth on that show for the abandonment of the ship was a possible pump congestion and instrument malfunction. Because apparently, Gibbs, the Mary Celeste had been used for transporting coal before it was loaded with industrial alcohol. And this coal would have caused a lot of dust. And according to the show, the pump was found disassembled on the deck. So the thought is that the crew may have been trying to clear it of, some type of obstruction. And then when you get into instrument malfunction, they talk about the fact that Captain Briggs may have thought he was much closer to Santa Maria than what they really were. They were actually 120 miles
and that
farther west.
Yeah, that kind of leads to your theory a little bit there when you said, they abandoned ship and thinking they're in the lifeboat, but how far do you really have to go? If he thought he was just a few miles that they could row it.
And we can make it, but if we're 120 miles from nowhere,
you're dead at sea, basically.
That's much rougher.
Yeah.
In 1913, the Strand magazine put out an account from an alleged survivor of the Mary Celeste. And this guy's version, everybody on board except for him,
of course,
drowned or was eaten by sharks after a platform on which they were all standing to watch a swimming contest collapsed into the sea.
So is he saying they made this little wood floating platform, like a little rec hour? Mm-hmm. We're gonna have a little R&R while we wait for this for us to get back going again. So let's build a little platform. We're all going to go out on it, and we're going to do some swim races.
That's what he's saying.
And it fell apart, and then when it fell apart, these sharks that weren't around when they went out there when they were swimming. Yeah,
but I guess in this account that he gave, he didn't get the captain's name right. He had the captain's daughter's age wrong. There was just a lot of inconsistencies.
I think he had the daughter's age, like at 7 years old, and she was just pretty much an infant, Mm-hmm. So, but they printed it. They went with it.
Well, it was 1913. In 1924, the Daily Express published a story from a retired naval war hero, Captain R. Lucy, who was given information from a person that was allegedly on the Mary Celeste. And in this story, Briggs and the crew are cast in a pretty bad light, Gibbs. It's said that they saw a derelict steamer. They boarded it. They found it deserted with 3,500 pounds worth of gold and silver in the safe. They decided to split the money, so they abandoned the Mary Celeste and they went to Spain to live their lives there. So, and according to the story, they reached Spain by using the steamer's lifeboats. But again, who knows?
I mean, how far is that going to take them? And why would we never heard? People, I don't care what century it is, people like to talk about what they do. Are you telling me nobody ever told anybody that they all kept their mouths closed all that time?
That's a good point. People can't do that today.
No. They didn't do it back then either.
So we mentioned the giant squid, and I kind of laughed it off. But there were articles in the early 1900s that suggested that the entire crew of the Mary Celeste were essentially picked off one by one.
Yeah.
By a giant squid or
it's like
octopus.
Orson Welles or some type of movie,
Yeah, like an old movie.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, these giant squid can get to be 50 feet long.
Yeah, that's pretty big, man.
And they were known to attack ships, but to pluck off individual people one by one?
Yeah. It seems a little bizarre.
It's a little
far-fetched.
Fantastical.
Fantastic. Ooh, fantastical.
I don't even know if that's a word.
It is now. Fantastical.
And then the paranormal activity, right? People have said, could it have been something similar to the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah.
Abduction by aliens. There's been all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
The only thing wrong with that is, as it relates to the Bermuda Triangle, doesn't usually everything disappear?
Yeah.
Not just the people.
But
it's usually a plane and everybody on it.
Yeah. So what happened there? And flying, aliens, abduction. I don't know. I mean, they do say that.
Are you going to tell me you believe in aliens?
I'm going to say that they do say saucers like to come down, dive into the water. Some stay submerged. Some just go into the water, collect water because they use the hydro.
Who is they? Who are these they?
The scientists today that believe in aliens.
Scientists that believe in aliens.
Yeah. Theorists.
Okay. Theorists, that sounds more like...
With a scientific background.
Okay. I don't know about how many scientists...
Have you ever seen that show? When they talk about the aliens, they have that one scientist theorist that, man, he's got his hair must be he's got a lot of hair, man. And he's like so 3 feet tall, man, with hair. His hair is 3 feet tall on top of his head.
That makes him more credible?
Yeah.
Because he has a lot of hair?
Yeah.
Oh,
if you ever watch those on Discovery, people were going, I know the guy he's talking about.
I don't watch Bigfoot. I don't watch Aliens. I don't watch none of those shows.
You're out, huh?
About things that I do not believe in.
All right.
But that's it. That's the story of the Mary Celeste. I mean, again, a lot of these theories, you can say, okay, I can see how something like that could happen. Some of these are way off for me, but you can also poke holes in a lot of them too.
Yeah.
But that's why it's a mystery.
It is a mystery.
All right, Gibbs, we got some voicemails. You want to do those?
Let's hear it.
Hello, Mike and Gibby. Renee Clarissa here. Just kidding. I don't have an accent. I am from Arizona, and I just wanted to leave you guys a voicemail saying thank you so much for your great knowledge on all of this true crime all the time. I jump back and forth from the unsolved to solved, and then I do listen to criminology. Depending on my mood. However, Team Furby, that's what it is. Team Furby, not Team Gibby, not Team Fergie, Team Furby, for both of you guys. So thank you guys for entertaining me while I work a 8-hour job, and it's so boring I want to tear my eyeballs out. But anyways, keep your own time taken. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
All right, great call. Gibbs, wasn't a Furby like some toy in the 80s or 90s or something?
I think, what's the thing that you wear, that costume? Is that not a Furby?
That's a furry.
That's a furry. Okay. Can you play with a Furby as a furry?
Probably. I thought a Furby was like one of the hit toys.
I think it was too.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Like a flash in the pan.
Kind of looked like a gremlin.
Yeah, but for a year or two, it was real popular.
Yeah.
I think it was called a Furby.
Yeah. But let's get back to the furry thing.
No, let's not.
Okay.
Hi, Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Tabitha. I just started listening to your podcast. I work at 4 a.m. every morning, and I have the opportunity to listen to podcasts all day in my office. And I come across yours, and I just binged all of PCAT. And I just wanted to say, I don't remember which episode it was. You guys were talking about a river run through it. That movie was based in Missoula, Montana, where I am from. And I currently live in Denver, Colorado. And it was actually filmed in Livingston, Montana, and Bozeman, which is a beautiful area, obviously. But I did have a case suggestion for you guys, is to do a case on Wayne Nance, who was a serial killer in Missoula, Montana. They believe he potentially started when he was 17 and went off into the military and killed a young girl there, and then went off in the military. Then he came back, and he targeted people by being a delivery man for Conlin's furniture store, and went on so far from there. But it's very interesting. He ended up being murdered by one of his victims and was never prosecuted, basically. So he's just kind of alleged like that. But it's a very interesting case. There's a book about him called To Kill and Kill Again. Anyway, keep it up, guys. I'm going to start binging The Unsolved, and keep it up. Bye.
All right, great call. Don't know when she'll get to this episode to hear her voicemail.
Right.
If she's just started binging Unsolved, but
Get there eventually.
Hello, my name is Casey Wood, and I was calling because I was listening to the Charles Ray Hatcher podcast, the episode, and I heard the town Mound City, and that is really close to where I grew up. And long story short, my grandpa was the sheriff of Holt County, Missouri, which is where Mound City is located. And during the beginning of his career, Charles Ray Hatcher, he was incarcerated in my grandpa's jail, which I may add was a very tiny jail. It was in the back of the courthouse, and my grandparents and my mother lived in the jail, but away from the inmate. And my grandma just knew that he was up to something. During the day, they were doing construction work outside, and she knew that he was up to something, so they searched his cell, and in the heel of his shoe, she found a file, and he was trying to file his way out of the jail cell. And when everything was said and done, my grandpa sat him down and asked him what he was going to do if he got out. And he said that he was going to slit my grandfather's throat, my grandmother's throat, and my mother's throat, who was a baby at the time. So that's my little tidbit family lore about Charles Ray Hatcher. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, you know, Gibbs, I love those firsthand accounts of people that had brushes with these serial killers.
You do, man. You like that stuff.
I don't know about living in the jail, even separated from the inmates. I'd still be I'd be a one eye open kind of sleeper, I think.
Yeah, I would be too.
That sounded a little Shawshank Redemption there.
A little bit.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Jackie, your mail carrier in Columbus, Ohio. I am your show all the time, all of them. And I love you guys to death. I think you guys do a great job with the facts and, keeping the whole thing rolling and just so I'm very updated. And I actually had a case suggestion, and I'm so curious where you guys, which podcast you would put it on, if you would have it on your Unsolved or if you have it on your True Crime one. The West Memphis case. They, since being convicted, they got an Alfred plea, and I'm just really curious if and when you guys look into it, where you feel it would fall, if it would be good for an Unsolved case, or if you think that they got the killers first time around, or there's a lot to the case. It would probably need to be a 2 or 3-parter, but I'm so curious what you guys thought. So, again, love the show. I'm not Team Gibby or Ferguson. I'm Team you guys. I think you're amazing, and I just enjoy you guys' death. So, yeah, that was a weird choice of words. Anyway, have a great day, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
All right. Love that from Jackie.
Yes.
And I think it's a perfect choice of words for the true crime crowd to say, I love you to death.
Seems like you to death.
Seems like it fits right in. Now, let's talk West Memphis 3. Fascinated by this case. It's a huge case. And, I've seen all the documentaries. I watched them when I was, fairly young. It's been on our list from the very beginning. So for me, technically the case is solved because of the Alfred plea, I guess.
Right.
But I would put it on unsolved. I consider the case unsolved. I think they took the Alfred plea to get out of jail, but they my assumption is they would have been found not guilty if they would have wanted to wait that long period of time.
But they wanted to get their life going.
Yeah, they wanted to get their life back, and I don't blame them. So I consider it unsolved, and I would put it on unsolved.
Yeah.
But you would go through, and that's why it would take a number of episodes to do that story.
Sure.
Because you'd have to go through all the trials. You'd have to go through all that. But it's a great case, and I think we will do it. I just don't know when. It's a big undertaking, for sure. All right, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Find yourself looking for a new job or change in career? Monster.com is here to help. We are not only here to bring you job postings, but also AI interview prep and salary tools, expert career advice, and top-notch resume services. We've got everything you need to land your perfect job fit. Discover the magic of finding the ideal job with Monster.com. Your future starts now. Visit Monster.com today. Your next job opportunity is just a click away.